Hello, everyone. I thought I would talk about book and file preservation, which is something that often doesn't get discussed when writers talk about writing. But I think it's very important that you save your book files properly. And there's no real perfect way to do it. For example, this is one of my early uh, books, Mr. Green. It's a book I never published because I decided I didn't really like a lot of it after I wrote it. But I wrote this all the way back in 2011. I printed it out on CreateSpace, but and again, I never published it. But there is no surviving digital copy of Mr. Green, as far as I know. Um, and that's because I wrote it on a very old computer that I was actually given to me after my sister no longer had any use for it. And that was the computer I used throughout high school. And then I got a laptop and I stopped using that computer. And so, but then when I moved to my new house, when I moved with my family, I already hadn't been using the computer for several years. So my parents, without really asking me about it, just sent it off to be destroyed, basically. And so all the files on that computer, most of them, were destroyed. And so this is the only thing that remains of Mr. Green. There is no digital copy to my knowledge. And again, I printed it out on CreateSpace, but CreateSpace no longer exists. And so, but anyway, and so you need to be careful about storing your files properly, or things like this could happen. And now there are several different ways. Of course, the easiest way is on your computer. But the thing is that computers crash, computers break. And so another way to back up your files is, of course, which is with a flash drive. And I've used the same flash drive since 2009. I don't really buy it when they say that, oh, flash drives only last 10 years. I've had mine for about 15 years, and it still works really well. And so that's another way. All my important documents, most of them, in the last few years, are saved on there. Well, except for I still don't have my short story collection, which I don't value as much, saved on there. I think it's only on my old computer. I probably need to transfer that eventually. My old computer still works, as far as I know. I just never use it. But so all of my books, for example, are on there. Um, However, flash drives can also break. They're physical objects. I mean, and so another way that I've stored my book files is that I often will email them to myself, and then I'll store them in the archived section. And you actually would be surprised how well that works. There are some stories, for example, in books that I emailed to myself a long time ago, some all the way back from 2012, and maybe even a little earlier, that I wouldn't have now because if I hadn't emailed them to myself, because they were destroyed on the other computer, and have only been preserved because I emailed them to myself. I didn't email Mr. Green to myself, as far as I know, but there were several others. There's this one story I wrote about like a nunnery, and that story, that I had forgotten that I had written. I had forgotten that I had written that story, even though it was basically a full length novel that I wrote in high school. But I don't really remember a lot of the things I wrote in high school, because I was so sleep deprived. My memory just isn't that good when it comes to events that occurred in high school. And so again, but that's another way, is storing it through email. And then of course another way is, if you are subscribed to Microsoft Word, which I am, I will save my stories in the cloud, which means you can access it from anywhere if you have a Microsoft subscription. And that might seem like the most permanent way, but even then, even though it's stored with Microsoft, companies can go bankrupt. And ever since I kind of don't like the fact that Microsoft has become a subscription service, where it used to be you could just use it without a subscription. Because my father pays for it now, but there may come a time though where he will be unwilling or can't pay for it, or something happens to him. So I won't be able to rely on Microsoft Word forever. Because when I talk about making sure your files are safe, I'm talking about preserving them years, decades from now, not in the immediate. There are plenty of ways of storing one's files when it comes to needing them to be safe short term. I'm talking long term. And to me, there really is no I really haven't come up with a perfect long term solution to storing digital files. Um, and of course, digital files haven't even been around very long, only about maybe the oldest digital files are only around 30, 40 years old. So we really don't know how long certain kinds of technology can last. Um, and now, of course, by by uh, printing by printing my books when I publish them, that's a way of preserving them because there are books that scattered all about. That's a way of preserving them physically. Digitally, though, I haven't figured out a perfect solution um, because well, of course, for example, when it comes to physical copies, if all of my physical copies of if all the physical copies of my books were destroyed, I could always print more. But then again, who knows how long Amazon will last? It seems like it might last a long time, but who knows? You never know. CreateSpace didn't last, so. But again, but having a lot of physical copies is a way to preserve a book physically. Digitally, though, there are a lot of setbacks and drawbacks, regardless of how you choose to save your files. Even when it comes to something like the cloud, it can be hacked and problems can arise there. So, but those are just some of the ways that I have gone about storing my digital book files.